Even if you manage to earn more money next year than you did this year, if you still feel poorer, what is the point? You need to ask yourself a serious question right now. Every time the United States prints money, do you get a cut? Think about it. If the global supply of money suddenly increases, but you don't receive a share of that newly printed cash, aren't you technically becoming poorer? You could be incredibly talented. Your hard work might earn you an extra $100 next year. But because of money printing, countless others might suddenly have an extra $1,000 while you only have that $100. So, although you technically have more money, you are poorer compared to everyone else. Simply put, every time money is printed, you don't need to do anything wrong to lose. You don't need to spend recklessly, and you don't even need to get scammed. The money doesn't physically leave your wallet. In fact, you could be working harder than ever. But as long as you aren't getting a piece of the new money pie, you are falling behind. Does that make sense? Printing money is essentially a mechanism to dilute wealth. If your wealth isn't diluted, but everyone else's is, then you become richer by comparison. And today, I am telling you that another era of massive money printing is just around the corner. Are you really ready for 2026? Hello everyone, welcome to Stewardship Finance Academy. The more a country prints money, the less valuable its currency usually becomes, right? Many people think, well, it's America's business if they print money. If the dollar loses value, that's their problem, not mine. But let's look at the data. If we look at the charts, we can see the Federal Reserve has increased the speed of money printing several times over since the 2008 financial crisis and the end 2020 pandemic. Logically, the US dollar should be worthless by now, right? Yet, you will find that one US dollar still exchanges for roughly 155 Japanese yen, 7 Chinese yuan, and 4 Malaysian ringgit. In simple terms, despite the printing, the dollar is still more valuable than most world currencies. Why? Because it isn't just the US printing money. The entire world is doing it, and often even more aggressively than America. Think of the economy like a growing child. A 3-year-old doesn't need much fabric for their clothes. But by the time they are 18, you can't keep squeezing them into toddler clothes, can you? If the GDP grows from 1 trillion to 2 trillion, but the money supply stays at 1 trillion, you get deflation. You produce more products, but there isn't enough cash in the market to buy them. Businesses go bankrupt, layoffs happen, and the market collapses. The bigger the economy, the bigger the child, the bigger the clothes need to be. In 2008, US GDP was about $14 trillion. Today, it is roughly $28 trillion. It has doubled. So we must realize that printing money isn't just a US issue. When any country's economy grows, they tend to print money. China, Japan, Europe, they all do it. And when they do, the money you have already worked for loses purchasing power. This is why US money printing affects you even more than it affects Americans. When the US prints, the rest of the world follows suit, often attempting to outpace them. We have to look at money printing relative to the size of the economy GDP. Think of it like drinking alcohol. You can't say someone is a heavy drinker just because they had 5 beers. If that person weighs 220 pounds, 5 beers might just make them tipsy. But if they weigh 110 pounds, they might be completely intoxicated. Similarly, even though the US is printed aggressively, that money currently accounts for about 21% of its GDP. What about Europe? Their printing has reached levels around 40% of their GDP. Japan is even more extreme, reaching roughly 105% of their GDP. Even in China, while the percentage has decreased since 2008, it is still around 35%. So, relatively speaking, the scale of US money printing is actually less than that of Japan, Europe, and China. This keeps the dollar strong. Now, as we look toward 2026, the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates and has stopped shrinking its balance sheet. The next logical step is expansion, printing more money. Once they start, your country will likely print even more aggressively to keep up. If you don't want to be a victim of this cycle, or if you hope to actually move up in the world, you need to stay informed. Subscribe to this channel so we can keep you updated. If you are worried you'll forget this, like the video to save it to your playlist. Let's look at the current situation. The Federal Reserve started cutting interest rates recently, bringing the rate down to about 3.75%. Then something historically terrifying happened. If you look at credit card interest rates in the US, whether it was the dot-com bubble or the 2008 crash, the highest rates usually peaked around 16%. That was the pressure point. Once it hit 16%, it would usually fall. But today, credit card interest rates have soared to over 21%. This means banks are lending to ordinary people at rates that feel incredibly punitive. Why? The Fed cut rates, so borrowing costs for banks dropped to 3.75%, yet they are charging customers 21%. That is a massive spread. Mortgage rates have also ticked up to the 6 to 7% range. The Fed is cutting rates, but the cost of living, from buying a house to buying a coffee on credit, is skyrocketing. Why? Look at the employment data. We see job creation numbers that look okay, but the unemployment rate has risen to a 4-year high of 4.4%. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? More jobs, yet more unemployment. Analysts, including reports from the Wall Street Journal, suggest that while large corporations are laying off full-time staff, those workers are picking up multiple part-time jobs just to survive. This creates more jobs on paper, but less stability. Banks see this. They know many people are struggling, unemployed, or juggling gig work, relying on credit cards to make ends meet. The banks perceive a high risk of default. To compensate for that risk, and perhaps to maximize profit while they can, they raise interest rates. It becomes a vicious cycle. You are broke, so you borrow at 21%. The debt compounds, making you poorer, which makes you a higher risk, so rates stay high. Simply put, rate cuts by the Fed aren't stimulating the economy for the average person right now. They're arguably padding bank profits while the consumer gets squeezed. Since consumption makes up 70% of US GDP, if the consumer breaks, the economy breaks. Here is another alarm bell ringing. During the 2020 pandemic, banks faced a liquidity crisis. They ran out of cash. The Fed created a backstop called the Standing Repurchase Facility, SRF. Think of it as a 24-hour emergency pawn shop for banks. If a bank is desperate, they can swap assets for cash there. For 3 years, almost no one used it because using it is essentially admitting we are in trouble. But recently, usage has spiked. Banks are quietly exchanging assets for cash. This, combined with low reserves, suggests banks are tight on liquidity. That is another reason they are charging you higher interest. They don't have money to lend. It's the only solution history shows us. Expand the balance sheet. Print money. Inject cash. This brings us to 2026. This is why you sometimes see people with modest incomes owning multiple properties or assets. It's not necessarily that they earn a high salary. It's that every time money is printed, they own assets that get inflated by that new cash. If you only hold cash, your wealth is transferred to them invisibly. Many people try to invest, but lose money on stocks or crypto because they don't realize they are playing a game where the odds are often stacked against them. You don't need to be a financial wizard. You need a system that treats investing like a business, not a gamble. If you want to learn our investing system for stocks, gold, and crypto, we have compressed it into a masterclass. We are offering this for free to our followers as a public service. Spots are limited, so check the link in the description if you are interested. Don't wait until the inflation hits to try and learn this. If you want to be ready for the next cycle, consider joining the training camp. And if you have a different opinion, please leave a comment. I love reading rational discussions. Next week, we will continue sharing insights on how to build wealth and aim for financial freedom. Please subscribe and share this video if you found it useful. If even one sentence today helps you protect your family's future, I am satisfied. See you next week. Bye.